I had a fear around failing in business. When I was growing up and my father was in the picture, my memories of him was always working and he always was his own boss, but it always ended up in failing. So the stories that I was always kind of told later was when the business failed and then this happened to us was always so negative. And I just looked at it and went, oh God, what if I do that? I know I can do it, but what if I can't? I didn't go all in because of the fear.
Welcome to another episode of the All Business Baby podcast. Today I'm speaking with Sarah Ferraina from Save My Marketing.
I was transitioning out of my full-time role. My eldest son came up to me and he just said, I just want to tell you I'm so proud of you, Mum. You run this family, you work that job and you're building your own business all to help us. I just want to tell you I'm so proud of you. And I tell you what, that changed everything. And I lean on that story because it's those moments. Going back to what does that look like? I realized in that moment that I am subconsciously sharing that you can do what you want. You can be whatever you want, but you got to work hard. It doesn't just come like that. And you are going to sacrifice things, but if you believe in it and it fuels you and it comes from passion, then you should do it. Cars, money comes and goes. Those dreams change. Those are the things that you carry for you throughout your life. I know I need to do something. Now I just got to figure out what.
What is it? Hey Sarah, so welcome to the All Business Baby podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Phil.
Just to start off, I wanted the audience to get to know you a little bit. So could you briefly share a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so I'm a marketing strategy coach and consultant. And what I do is I work with small business owners to guide them through their marketing strategies to ultimately help them grow their business. I do that through advisory, which is the coaching side, but also often they say, oh my goodness, now I get it. Mm-hmm. Can you help me? How can you do it for me? So that's where that consulting arm comes in. And I guess that done for you term that's now thrown around. So yeah.
So I guess in simple terms, it's like you're the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer for a small business, right?
Absolutely. In fact, that's where my difference is as a consultant versus a more traditional agency is that I really get into your business and become part of it alongside you. Yeah. And that's how I can add more value because often, even though I might come at it with a marketing lens, the impact is even operationally. So it could come down to people. And I've managed a lot of people over my time. I've built teams, how people also work together across departments. So it kind of starts with marketing, but it really becomes much broader.
Excellent. Okay. That's great. Your business sounds like a good idea, but let's find out a little bit more about yourself. So what was your childhood like growing up here in Sydney? Did you grow up in Sydney? Just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yep. Born and raised in Sydney, inner west. I am first generation Australian. I have Italian ethnicity. My mum came here, on the boat. She was 8 years old when she came. And my father migrated as an older adolescent. So I grew up in Drummoyne or Five Dock area here in Sydney and had big culture of, a mix of Italian and Greek around me. But also in that area, there was a big, Australian community as well. And I mention that because very early, although I'm of a generation that didn't necessarily experience as, much, I guess, challenges when it comes to culture. And I don't want to use the word racism. I think that's probably a bit too strong, but I definitely did experience elements of that where, at school, I always tell the story that I was putting English second language as a class. And even though I was born here, but, it would just kind of like default or put into that group. And it's funny, I never thought of it then, but as an adult later, I thought, isn't that strange? And
you know what? Australians, we're not racist, we're multicultural.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. That is the better, that's it, exactly that. But it was just that understanding then. But, even though I was born here, I very much grew up with the stories of home for my grandparents and my parents. So I didn't assimilate as much to the Australian narrative and our culture here until I actually left as a young adult and traveled. And then I really appreciated the fact, no, I'm Australian.
Yep.
I identified as Italian. I hadn't even been over there until I was in my early 20s. Along with those stories, you also adopt different I guess, mindset. And as someone now, I'm in my, 40s, I realize now, I appreciate some of that conscious, but more so the subconscious kind of thinking and belief systems that really have impacted me today, and definitely in business as well. So, and that's really come from that culture, I say, in particular. But yeah, that was that's my background. My mum became a single parent as well when I was, I think, 9 years old. That was an interesting experience. And so that really changed, I grew up really in feeling very secure. And, when I look back at that time in my life, feeling like I had everything as a young girl, and that literally in a few hours in a night changed very quickly, where that situation changed. We left where we were very quickly, and I began down a new pathway where I learned a lot of different things about life. And I look back now and I think a lot of things that have made me resilient, but a lot of, I think, challenges, I've had to overcome as well around fear and scarcity and such, which, as you know, these things impact how you lead a business and how you lead your life, and particularly a business.
Well, I kind of feel we had similar, childhoods growing up, single parent household, and that kind of makes you a strong person. You can't really buy a tough childhood, right? But, you could have gone either way with it. You could have gone down the bad path, or go, you know what, this is just going to make me stronger and more resilient, and, go down that path. I think I was teetering between the bad path, to be honest, but then I was like, you know what, I've got to be responsible, take care of the family, and go down this path. And I think, that was a good choice on my end, looking back now, so thank God. But that childhood or that upbringing, do you feel like that has helped you as a business owner now?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And, I always say hindsight's a beautiful thing, like the saying goes. You don't necessarily know that at the time until you stop to reflect. That's something I've prioritized in the last, couple of years, develop myself. And in that, you have to face a lot of things, right? To grow as a person, you have to look back and look at the blind spots. So absolutely. And as a mum of 3 children myself, not only do I look back and see how it's helped me, but I can also see the opportunities or the things that you're kind of passing on subconsciously. And you go, oh no, even on the drive here, I was thinking of, belief systems that you set yourself. And, I was always like, oh, you're not very good at telling stories. That was always something that I kind of told myself. And as I was driving here thinking, we're going to have a conversation, I was like, no, I am good at telling, and I'm telling myself this, just training the brain.
Yes.
But then I was thinking of my son, who's always like, I'm not good at telling jokes. And, and we kind of laugh because it does get a bit muddled. But I thought, oh, gee, this is where it all begins, right? Where you start to tell yourself this narrative and it becomes a belief, and then it shuts you down in other ways later. So absolutely, it's helped me in business, but it's helping me also raise the next, generation in my family. And hopefully that continues.
Yeah, I agree. The self-belief system is a big thing. If you believe you can't do it, then you can't do it. But if you believe you can, then you can. And I think, anyone out there that is looking to do something for themselves that has that self-doubt. I mean, I had the self-doubt when I started business, got onto videos, did not want to do it, did not want to look at myself. I thought, I can't speak at all. But then, I think after procrastinating about it, I finally took action, and that's the main thing, right? You got to take action. If you do, then ultimately you go to yourself, or you look back and you go, okay, I can do it. I just doubted myself. So the belief system is a huge thing that I'd say is something that really holds people back, that self-doubt. So thanks for sharing. Now, before you got into business, what were you doing before, Sarah?
Yeah, I've always worked so much. I was thinking about this, I was thinking, when did I start this business and preparing? And I thought, actually, I've always done at least 2 jobs, even if it was always building some sort of a side hustle. So before this, from a professional standpoint, I've worked in corporate businesses for 22 years, worked my way up to the C-suite in the marketing capacity, as you said, like CMO roles, grew teams, reshaped teams, etc. Worked for a variety of different brands, everything from fast food, franchise, hospitality. My first job was with Oporto franchise. I look back I'm so grateful that I landed that job. I was studying university full-time halfway through my degree. I need money. I want to go overseas one day, and just gave myself the summer to go, if I can land a job, I'll just do my whole degree at night full-time, and I'll just work full-time. And that's what I did. But it set me on an early path in my career, which was good.
Yes.
And I went then overseas and worked in publishing and worked in finance. And my last role employed was in the HR recruitment space. So I've really moved around, and I used to worry, oh my goodness, I'm not sticking to one specialization. Is this going to be a weakness? I wasn't even thinking about my own business at that time. But now I'm just so grateful, as I said, and I use that word intentionally because I've had such whole rounded skills, but also know that, you know, I've proven that when you can apply certain principles and frameworks, it can thrive, you know, your marketing, you can grow no matter what your business. So yeah, I look back and I now take that story and that strength into my business today.
So well versed in different industries in marketing, right?
Yes.
Very experienced, but I guess what made you decide, what was a trigger for you to go, you know what, stuff the corporate world, I'm going to start my own business?
Yeah. So that was the kind of professional landscape, but I always worked 2 jobs, like I was saying. So even as a young kid, I was just saying the other day, I think it was like back when I was working, I don't know if it was legal, but anyway, I got the job. 12 years, 9 months, I started like hairdressing, and I was always doing different things and studying and such. And that was really from this drive. I've always had a drive to ambition, you know, do more, learn. I didn't know exactly what that was. It was just me. It was just part of who I am. There was no label on it. And that feeling, to be honest, never really left. There was always ideas popping off in my head to the end, you know, I'd be like, I could do this. What about, oh, that's a great idea. There's an opportunity there. And it got actually, if I wasn't doing it for myself, you know, when friends or family would say, I'm not sure what to do, or I'm doing this, I'm like, oh my God, I've got this great idea. I can see, why don't we do this? Always injecting myself. We can do this. We can do that.
Yeah.
I was just still doing, you know, the usual work, and in the meantime, I was growing a family. Okay, so I traveled overseas.
So 3 jobs, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I got back to Australia, that's really when I settled down, got married. And a few years after getting married, we had our first of 3 children. And, you know, always taking those breaks, but every break, maternity leave that I took, I started working, doing something. And then I'd eventually go, oh no, security, go back to work. That time was up, and just focus back on the job. And, you know, life got more difficult and costs became more, you know, important. I didn't think of it as an entrepreneurial spirit, but I do now, these ideas. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, enough's enough, Sarah. I just started shutting that side down, which is really sad now that I think of it.
Yes.
But it didn't last long, obviously, because when it's just part of you can't shut down this beast. But I was shutting it down because I was scared. I had a fear around failing in business. I've always had a growth mindset. Everything's a learning, but I had a weakness around failing in the business context. And I'll tell you why. When I was growing up and my father was in the picture, he wasn't around much. My memories of him was always working, and he always was his own boss, but it always ended up in failing the business and
his business,
and devastatingly, bankruptcies, and changed the course of my family life, you know, from having a home to not having, you know, things like that over the years. So the stories that I was always like kind of told later was, you know, oh, and then when the business failed and then this happened to us, was always so negative. And I just looked at it and went, oh God, I don't want to do that. What if I do that? And I know I can do it, but what if I can't? And then I'll have this impact on my family. And that's the last thing I want to do. Everything I do ultimately is for me, but for them, you know.
Yeah,
and
correct.
I don't want to then, it has the adverse effect.
Yeah,
take this risk, and it has this big effect. And it just, even though I did these little side hustles between being off on mat leave, they ultimately didn't turn out, because I look back and I see how I approached them wrong, but really I didn't go all in. And because of the fear, I went back to the security blanket of the paycheck. And even though my husband is very, very supportive, that has always followed me. And the truth is, it still does. I'm not going to sit here and go, and now it's gone and it's all great. And, you know, going back to what we were saying before, we have fear to do things, turn up on camera, talk. I believe it's always there. It's just how much power you give it to it. And that power dissipates perhaps. But yeah, you know, when the months where I'm really hustling and the business isn't coming in, that fear is like, you know, in my ear going, is this the right move? Have you done the right thing? Could this be the beginning of that?
Too much time on your hands, Sarah.
I just go, all right, shut up, be quiet. I know you're there. And that's how I deal with it. But it's why did you start your business and why did you start it now? You know, I see it like that is, I started it because I always knew I could do more for myself. And that's not about financial and all those, I guess, material elements are
This is for
important.
yourself. You just
This
wanted
was
to
about
create something.
Exactly. I can't even describe the feeling. It's just, for anyone listening who just has that burning, you just know there's more for you. I started it for that. There's a passion, there's a drive. And I went, I know I can do more. I know I can give more, and I'm a giver. It was just working out how and channeling my skills and my knowledge. But although that inspires and helps people, it's how I am that inspires them. I think that's why people work with me as well. And why I started now is I went after 3 kids and this bloody voice in my head, always these ideas coming up. I just went, that's enough. But the real catalyst, Phil, was I was in hospital, just giving birth to my daughter, my 3rd and final child.
Are you sure?
I won't put it on record because you never know, it could come back to bite me. But it was such a beautiful moment. I was in hospital. It was less than 24 hours after on it. Like I was still in the delivery suite. The news is on. It's COVID 2020 March. Lockdowns have been announced. Homeschooling. I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, how am I going to homeschool my eldest son? My middle child at the time was finishing up daycare. So he was home anyway, but daycare at the time, we could still kind of send them. And then opened the email from my employer, I have huge respect for. After the congratulations, Sarah, was the all business email of, don't know if we're going to survive this, guys. And it was really heartfelt and honest, and I respected that. But we were in an industry that was heavily impacted, like many, and we were one of them. And when you are in a support function, as myself, ahead of the marketing department, I'm not in the sales team.
You're the first one to go. See you later.
Do the map. Like, that you are more vulnerable when push comes to shove. So even though all these other elements were bubbling in the background, if I had to pinpoint a catalyst, it was in that moment when I thought, I don't want to feel this way. And my sense of what is secure and what's stability, which I associated with a job, that was no longer the truth.
Wow, that would have been a really tough time, being on the hospital bed, just giving birth, and then here you go, you're fired, you got no job, no security, and you must have felt so vulnerable at that point.
I did, but that fight, I gave into that, and the fear of that feeling of not acting and being vulnerable was more than the fear of failing at something, if that makes sense. I was like, well, I prefer,
want that again?
you know what, that's worse. Like, I prefer to give it a go and work give it everything.
Yeah, I think because at that point you have no control. You're at the mercy of someone else, right? Whereas I think if you, as you said, you'd rather fail because at least you gave it a shot. And you failed in your own terms, and you can be satisfied that, hey, I gave it my all, didn't work out, let's, try another thing.
Exactly.
Right?
I think that paradigm and going back to that cultural piece, growing up was like, if you work hard enough, you work, you get the stability, get the house, get the security, security. And then from that narrative, and that's a big cultural narrative in the, the European, and everyone would buy up houses, and that's back in that, time. And then going from what felt like security as a young child to not feeling secure because all of a sudden family dynamic completely changed. And, don't get me wrong, my mum brought myself and my brother up as if I felt like I had everything. But I think there's that subconscious piece.
You just know that you're missing the other parent.
And that things are tough. So that then drove me wanting to have security again. And then so that was like, well, being employed is secure, right? So all of a sudden that whole belief system was shattered because I thought, well, working for myself or working for someone is really, the security is just as, they're one and the same. Yeah. Like, it's just like you said, it's on your terms.
Yeah.
I can control, whereas the decision for me to lose my job is in someone else's hands.
You just never know when it's going to happen, right? You think it's all daisies and roses, and then next minute, gone.
Exactly.
No, that's very insightful, and thanks for sharing that story. That was a catalyst for you starting your business, right? Because that was a few years ago, wasn't it?
That was
because you've only started your business recently. So then,
so that was really
during that time.
I was like, okay, I know I need to do something. Now I just got to figure out what.
What is it? Well, actually, before you get to that, right? So you did say that you were doing other side hustles throughout, previous maternity leaves. What were the side hustles and why did they fail?
So the first one was in marketing. It was consulting.
Okay.
And when I look back now, I approached it all wrong. There was an opportunity that arose where, someone goes, oh, someone needs help. And you're like, well, maybe I could do it. So all of a sudden you become a busy ABN, you kind of register it. And you go in and, I was it wasn't the right fit for really the type of work I wanted to do. I was on the tools for everything. I didn't want to I didn't want to outsource anything. So I wanted all the revenue or the profit. I was working late at night. I had that time, I'm trying to think which child it was. I think it was the first one. He was a child, I wasn't letting anything go. I was doing as much as I could late at night and just burning out.
And that's when you make the most errors, I feel.
Yeah.
Right, at night after doing everything else, your job, taking care of the kids.
And, I'm servicing this client, and then I think I picked up another short-term project, but I wasn't really approaching it. I was approaching it as a job, and I could earn a bit of extra cash. I wasn't approaching it as a business to go, okay, what am I trying to create here? Why am I doing that? How am I going to grow it? It was like an opportunity came up, I took it, got the gig and just tried to help, and I enjoyed it, but, it wasn't sustainable. And then I just gave that up and went back to work. The other one was totally different. Again, it was all in this search for achieving other things, so flexibility. So when my second child, my son, was born, I was home again.
Bored.
And my sister-in-law had started a children's wear e-commerce store. And she came to me asking for advice. So I'm giving her all these marketing tips. I had been working for a business where we were selling e-commerce as well as direct services. And then I was getting excited, right? Because all I had to do otherwise was just take care of my child, which I know sounds terrible because I love my children, but I'm not obviously I get joy from them. I wouldn't have had kids if I don't, but it's different. Again, it was fueling that fire and that creative thinking. I was like, well, maybe I can go in on this with you. So before you know it, I was in that business, and then we took it to a bricks and mortar store, and again going all whilst I'm on maternity leave.
Time.
And again, and that was really good. I learned so much. I mean, it was an area that I wasn't experienced in, as going through wholesale and learning all that, and it's a lot of money up front to secure your stock, and so ultimately, again, when the higher paying, more expertise job came knocking back, I was due to go back to that. I went, I'm going to go back to that. I'll just maintain weekends here, and we hired people and stuff, but I just was getting distracted, and I realized that's not really where I want to be. And for my sister-in-law too, her priorities changed. So we just ended up wrapping up that business, and that was fun while we did it. And we did that for a couple of years, but it was, I was hoping it would open the door to flexibility for my kids, because prior to COVID, I was very much struggling to even work 4 days a week. So flexibility was a huge driver for me. And I was lucky to get that final, employed job where I got desperate and was applying for anything, even admin roles, and I couldn't find anything in marketing, but found a part-time marketing job, which eventually I went back to full-time in. But so the flexibility became I had it for a while, and then I sacrificed it again.
I think it's just due to timing and being safe and secure, as you were saying. And, I feel like, and I've been there as well, where you start a side business, a side hustle, and you think, okay, things are going to go well, but you're trying to balance, your full-time job, the security, but also, the side business. And, I recall I was trying to start let's just call it an insurance type Uber business. It got to a point where I spent quite a bit of time, and I was like, okay, it's time to put some money behind it. And I felt, if this blows up, I'm going to have to quit my full-time business at the time. So then I thought, am I ready to let go of this and commit? Because you can't do two things at once, especially two big projects at once. You've got to go all in with one, because otherwise you lose concentration, and you try to do something for this business and something for that business, you end up doing nothing really, because you're not going to get anywhere, right? Your time is split. And I just pulled back on it and continued on Solve at the time, which I don't regret, because it's my baby and I want to build and see my baby grow. But there's always those ideas and that I've dabbled in that I never really got to see the end of it, just because I didn't want to take that risk from the security.
Yeah. And there's another dimension I want to add, which I think is important for maybe some of your listeners who may be in a similar situation. We're talking very much about one kind of perspective, but during that whole time, I was also in the stage of building a family, So as much as I'm there going, I want to build this, there's kind of that part of me that knows, well, I'm also in this kind of prime time where we're growing a family. We knew we wanted to even have a third child at some point. So, and the truth is, I'm the one that will always take the step back. That's the reality. It's not about a feminist thing but that is
just
the
mother
reality.
in you.
Exactly. It's just so it was almost like I want to go in, but then I got to think, if we end up going for that other child, then
Yeah.
that means I'm going to have to step back. What does that mean? Can I do, and it only gets harder the more you pile on more kids, And
Yeah.
so I think that's important to recognize. Like, I want to share the message because I think I see a lot of people, even in my industry in particular, my competitors, where, there's definitely a thing, I could have done this, should have started this when I was younger, but I really now was the right time, because the truth is, I don't think, to your point, aside from the fear of the financial, that I could really commit and go all in.
Yep.
And although I have those kids now and they require, that family unit requires time, it's different how I can manage that, and and it's changing, but it's at a different stage. So
And now
I think it's okay if you want to do it and you're at this stage and right now it's not the right time. It's okay. There is time. You know.
That's a good point. I think as you have more kids, you kind of care less. Is that right, Sarah? That's why you're like, I can do business now after your third one.
Well, I think too, I just went, and I want to touch on something you said, which really resonates with me, because, most people have a side hustle. The idea is when it makes enough money that I can quit my job, that's when I'm going to go all in. And I was doing, that was the plan. You know what? It didn't make enough money and I still went all in. And that's because I went, if I don't do it now, when am I really going to do it? Now, don't get me wrong. We looked at all the finances. We looked, how long could we sustain this? If I look at timing, that's probably not the best time. I think should have done that when I had one child and life was a bit, not as expensive as it is now. But it's true. I mean, my best friend, who I've known since I was 5 years old, she always said, Sarah, until you can do it full time, you're never going to,
Yes.
There is truth to that. But it was the fear that was really holding me back. But I just, again, went, that's enough. I need to do this, because I noticed when I put energy into it, I would see the fruits of that. I was getting to the point where I'd take annual leave from work so I could work full time in my business to service to grow. And you'd see those fruits, but then you couldn't sustain it because you'd go back to night times working on it, or weekends. Great if you can get it to that point where it can deliver enough income, and but I think sometimes you just have to take the leap and have the courage. Do it in.
And you're a great example of taking the leap multiple times, then failing, but then going again, because, and look, you've done that, but you clearly still have your family intact. You're still surviving, right? So, it's not the worst case. And, ultimately, if you do fail, go back to your day job. That will be that security for a bit of time until you've got that fire to start another business, which, you now have.
Yes.
So that's a great tip. Without sharing the tip, thank you for telling us those stories. Now that you're back onto a new business, which you've started the last year or so, from your previous runs at it, what would you say is different now? And what are some tips that you can share to anyone else looking to go again in business?
Great question. So much is different.
Yeah.
As I said, the idea was 4 years ago, and the reason why the business, Save My Marketing, which is now called, really, I've only focused it really heavily in the last few years. So, those first few years, I just took my time to understand what I wanted the business to be. And what does that mean? Well, I firstly decided, instead of looking outwards, what's something else I could do, I went, Sarah, you have all this experience. You're not acknowledging how much you have to offer. And it was when I'd help all those other friends, there's that exercise of when you're having self-doubt, think of all the times that you have done something to help, again, rewire the brain. I thought, think of all those times you helped a friend, a family, and, and they go, wow, I didn't know that,
Yeah.
So I immersed myself in community groups, which was all online at that point, and could see that, what I did have to offer was valuable and helpful. That's important to me. I want to enable and empower people. Okay. That's ultimately. So the first tip is spend the time to really get to the heart of what you're trying to achieve. You can call it goals. For me, it's not a goal. It's not a mission statement. It's really the beating heart of the business. Purpose is probably the closest thing, but aligns to who I am, because my business is to do with me. So that's relevant. And that's something I never did. I just jumped at opportunities. Oh, you've got a shop? Oh, I like this.
Let me jump in. Let me try and make money.
I didn't actually, it was driven by something else. It wasn't really what I wanted to do and where I felt I could really offer something I could really offer the world. So that's, I guess, the first one. The second tip I would say is then take the time exploring. How does that actually look? What is the offering? And although this might sound marketing, again, you could go out there and just try try and wing it. And sometimes that helps. Again, opportunities present, you go, yeah, okay, I'll go down that. That makes sense. But try to have something. It doesn't have to be perfect. And mine has changed and it's evolved. But again, have something that you can start to go, this is what I'm trying to achieve. What could that look like? How can I achieve that? The third one, which I really is popping into my head a lot, is thinking like a business owner. It's not a job, okay? And that's something I touched on. I created a job. I wasn't approaching it as a business. And all those things are thinking as a business owner. What am I trying to create here, mold, etc. But when I say that in particular for me, it was around the finances. So let me elaborate a little bit around that. I've always managed my personal finances, my family finances.
The CFO of the family.
Exactly. Yep. Done that. Never had any issues. But again, I think, and I'm still trying to understand, I think there's fear around that business failing piece. Looking at my business finances, I found really difficult. To the point like I didn't have the right systems to actually see. I was just like, felt like I was making money, revenue coming in, costs are going out. I didn't separate it from the personal things as well. Had no tracking, thank goodness for my bookkeeper, who I had to face that fear around money. And that's really what it was. It was a mindset. I didn't want to actually face like, is this working or not? And, even though in my corporate life, I managed budgets, like I knew to do that, but it wasn't my money.
When it comes to yourself, you tend not to care about yourself too much.
So, and making decisions, shaping the business around that. So I think, if that is a fear for you, you got to get over it, face the fear, tackle it head first. It's going to be okay. I cannot tell you the majority of my coaching clients are not close to their business money. They think they know what they're making. They're not, most businesses, they're not. I don't know if that's something you see to feel in your line of work.
I do quite often. I agree.
So I feel for me, the moment I stepped into that, I actually felt like a business owner. That was a turning point. I was making decisions from that point. Yes, still driven by intuition and gut, which is important to me, and my knowledge and speaking to people and being out there. But the problem with me is, well, it's not a problem, it's a good thing, but it can be, it can be a problem, is I have so many ideas. But then, so you have your goals, but also look at the data.
You got to make sure that it fits, that you can actually achieve it, right? Otherwise, it might be too lofty and you won't be able to
And it may not be a now thing, put it in the bank kind of thing for
the later basket.
So I think, that would be, there are a lot of other little things, but, be really clear what you want. Take the time to explore it, be open-minded, start to shape something. Even just, I'm very visual. I like to write things down. I got a million whiteboards. It's like I was destined.
You shouldn't have shit it out of your brain, right?
It's, put it all around you, but be open to evolve, but be close to your data. So it's financial data, but also, I guess in my world, knowing, what's working, what isn't, in the marketing space.
Yeah, I think to your point, like getting the basics right when you first start business, or just having understanding of the basics, especially the financial side of things is very key, because, you're going to know within the first 6 months or so whether this is working or not, and whether you need to pivot and make changes. Because if you don't, and you're just going off a whim, well, bloody hell, you're going to fail pretty quickly.
And I think I'll just add one more thing, which I know you would also appreciate. I talk about, I coach people, so I'm promoting like invest in others, and it doesn't have to be financially all the time. Your mentors, a lot of people, I've had a mentor. I was part of a leadership program and I had a mentor, and that was huge in my journey. But surround yourself by people, and in particular, when I say people, business people.
Yes.
It's not always family and friends, not saying they're not supportive.
Yes.
And I definitely have those people in my back corner, but it's the business community that I'm building around me, that I learn so much from, and
it's the environment that you're in that
That's
definitely helps you get you where you need to go a lot quicker. I know for a fact a lot of my friends aren't business minded or business savvy, and so when I'm in that sort of environment, I feel left out or feel out of place. But going to meet with business owners and networking with those guys, I feel a lot better. Like I can be myself, right? So to your point, I think invest that time, surround yourself with like-minded people. Definitely. Depending on what you're doing, that's just going to help you. I always like to say, I like to be the dumbest in the room, right? Because then that allows me to then learn, and it's kind of like we kind of live in a copycat world. If other people are doing great, you want to be great as well. No, thanks for sharing. Now, before we wrap up, just wanted to get an idea of, so, you're in business now. It seems like you're more, I'd say, driven to achieve and make this a successful business. Now, what does it mean for you? Like, if you are to achieve that, Sarah, what does it mean for you ultimately? Like, what does that give you?
I take it every time I'm asked that question, I have to take a deep breath in because it's so hard to even describe, because yes, there is the elements that you see. Okay. So financial, obviously this is all driven to have a certain lifestyle, and that's different to everyone. Like for me, my now goals are just getting through securing our home. Obviously, I'd like to be mortgage free, renovating, creating. There's been a dream that my husband and I and our family have been wanting for a long time to see that come to fruition, and being able to heavily contribute to that is that just lights me up, being able to give, because it's so much more than a house. Do you know what I mean? That environment. And again, for someone who, the home that I felt connected to at a young age, that was kind of stripped away very quickly, creating that base and that for my family.
That's nice.
There's, and all the opportunities I want to provide my kids and all that. But there's just the only word that I can honestly describe is like happiness, just feeling really self-content and that self-belief that you can do something. And again, as a parent, I am role modeling. So it's so much for me, those feelings. But, I have a little story that I was working really hard one night, and I was still, I was transitioning out of my full-time role, my work employed role, to go full-time. So I transitioned out of it over a few months, and I was working, and my eldest son came up to me, because that's the guilt you carry, because the truth is you go in for flexibility and balance, but you are always sacrificing something. That's the truth. Okay.
And it's not that the first couple of years as well.
No. And and I always carried that, and I'm hearing, my mom, like, you should be with the kids. What are you doing? All these. So there's, again, that cultural thing of, am I doing the right thing? Am I missing out on precious moments? Which, I have. But I missed out on those when I was employed too, because I had a million meetings and I couldn't go to the school things.
Yeah.
But he came into the room where I work. I have a home office, and he just said, instead of calling me to go, Mom, what are you doing? Come. He said, I just want to tell you I'm so proud of you, Mum.
Oh, that's nice.
Said, you run this family, you work that job, and you're building your own business all to help us. I just want to tell you I'm so proud of you. And I tell you what, that changed everything. And I lean on that story because it's those moments. So going back to what does that look like? I realized in that moment that I am subconsciously sharing that you can do what you want. You can be whatever you want, but you got to work hard. It doesn't just come like that. Okay. And you are going to sacrifice things, but if you believe in it and it fuels you and it comes from passion, then, you should do it, So that's that. When I think of that, it's cars, money comes and goes. You might, those dreams change. Yeah, I want to go overseas. I want to do it. But those are the things that you carry for you with life, throughout your life.
Yeah. Look, I really felt that, Sarah. Like, I think we do all these things and we get distracted with doing it, but it's also nice to have our loved ones, whether it's husband or kids, to say, you know what, I appreciate what you're doing. So that's very nice. Yeah. Good work. You're doing well, Sarah. But look, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So if you're about to begin your business journey, or you're currently going through your business journey, tune into future episodes so that you can learn more and find a supportive community. Otherwise, follow me on LinkedIn for more.